The distress call. The central chamber of the Galactic Council's Grand Hall fell silent as Ambassador Vexel of the Zeraxian Confederation approached the speaking podium. His translucent exoskeleton, normally a vibrant azure, had faded to a sickly pale blue. The bioluminescent patches along his thorax pulsed with erratic desperation, a clear distress signal to any species familiar with Zeraxian physiology. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council, Vexel's voice quavered through the translator. I come before you today with grave news. The entity known as the Swarm has breached the outer defenses of the Epsilon Quadrant. 3 of our colony worlds have already fallen. Our home planet, Zerax Prime, has less than 7 standard cycles before the Swarm arrives. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. The Swarm was not unknown to the gathered representatives, a hive-minded collective of insectoid creatures that consumed all organic matter on planets they invaded, using the biomass to create more of their kind before moving to the next world. High Counselor Meritax of the Volderi Dominion raised a slender 6-fingered hand. The Council sympathizes with the Zeraxian plight, Ambassador. We shall convene a special committee to assess the situation and formulate an appropriate response. With respect, High Counselor. Vexel's translator strained as his vocal sacs vibrated frantically. We don't have time for committees. My people are pacifists. Our technology focuses on healing and creation, not destruction. We have no military to speak of. The Swarm will consume us all. From the lower tiers of the chamber, where newer council member species were seated, a human representative stood. Commander Eliza Chen of the Terran Defense Force wore her formal navy blue uniform adorned with combat medals, decorations viewed with a mixture of fascination and discomfort by many council species. The Terran Alliance can have a battle group at Zerax Prime in 18 hours, she stated, her voice cutting through the chamber without technological amplification. 3 dreadnoughts, supporting destroyers, and full marine complements. High Counselor Meritax's expression shifted to one of barely concealed displeasure. Commander Chen, while your enthusiasm is noted, there are protocols to follow. The Council must authorize any military intervention in member space. Beyond that, your species has only recently achieved FTL capability. Your understanding of galactic politics is limited. Chen's expression remained neutral, but those near her noticed her jaw tighten slightly. What the High Counselor means is that you're uncomfortable with Deathworlders, like us taking action without supervision, she replied evenly. Meanwhile, the Zeraxians face extinction while we debate protocol. The Galactic Council had classified Earth as a Class 12 Deathworld upon first contact, a designation given to planets whose inhabitants evolved under conditions so harsh that most Council species would perish within hours if exposed to the same environment. Humans had developed in an environment filled with predators, diseases, extreme weather, and shifting tectonic plates. They had evolved to withstand pain, survive injuries, and, most concerning to the Council, wage war against their own kind. Ambassador Vexel turned his compound eyes toward Commander Chen. The Zeraxian Confederation would welcome Terran assistance, Commander. Our people know of your reputation. Many Council species find humans unsettling, but we find hope in your strength. High Counselor Meritax raised all 3 of his eye stalks in alarm. Ambassador, I must advise caution. The Terrans are barely a century past their internal nuclear conflicts. Their tendency toward violence may be exactly what we need. Vexel interrupted, a breach of Council etiquette that demonstrated his desperation. When faced with the Swarm, perhaps we need those who understand predation from evolutionary experience. Commander Chen stepped down from her position and approached the central podium, ignoring the whispers that followed her. Standing before the ambassador, she extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Under Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Clause of our membership charter, any Council species may directly request aid from another without full Council approval in cases of imminent extinction. Chen recited. Ambassador Vexel, Does the Zeraxian Confederation formally request Terran military intervention against the swarm? We do, Vexel replied without hesitation, reaching out with a trembling appendage to touch Chen's outstretched hand. The Zeraxian people formally request the aid of Earth's military forces. Chen nodded once, then tapped the communication device on her wrist. Chen to TDF command. Authorization code Sierra November 559. Operation Guardian Angel is a go. Mobilize the 4th Fleet to Zeraxian space immediately. Before the Council could protest further, Commander Chen turned to address the assembled representatives. The Terran Defense Force accepts the Zeraxian request for aid. We will depart immediately. Any species wishing to contribute to this effort is welcome to join us when their committees finish deliberating. Aboard the TDF dreadnought Thermopylae, Commander Chen studied the tactical display showing the Zeraxian home system. Admiral Weizong, commander of the 4th Fleet, stood beside her with hands clasped behind his back. 17 ships, Commander, Admiral Zhang said quietly. That's all we could gather on such short notice. It will have to be enough, Chen replied. The swarm consists of approximately 200 vessels according to Zeraxian intelligence. Most are organic technology hybrids rather than pure warships. 200 to 17. Zhang mused, his weathered face creasing into what might have been a smile. I've seen worse odds. Lieutenant Commander Jackson approached with a data tablet. Ambassador Vexel has arrived on board, and we've received the complete Zeraxian database on the swarm. Their biology, ship compositions, previous attack patterns, it's all here. Chen nodded. Get it to tactical analysis immediately. I want vulnerabilities, potential weaknesses, anything we can exploit. Already underway, Commander, Jackson replied. One more thing. We're picking up transmissions from other Council vessels. The Volderi are dispatching ships, as are the Melderans and Arcturians. Time frame for their arrival? Zhang asked. 4 to 6 days, sir. Chen and Zhang exchanged glances. The Zeraxians don't have 4 to 6 days, Chen said. We deploy alone. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. They had all seen the footage from the fallen Zeraxian colonies. The swarm left nothing alive, not even microorganisms. Entire ecosystems consumed, replaced with the chitinous architecture of swarm hive structures. All hands to battle stations, Admiral Zhang ordered, his voice calm but resolute. Prepare jump calculations for Zerax Prime. Commander Chen, please escort Ambassador Vexel to the secure diplomatic quarters. He should be safe there during combat operations. Chen found the ambassador in the ship's observation lounge, his compound eyes fixed on the stars outside. His exoskeleton had regained some of its color since coming aboard the human vessel. Ambassador, we're preparing to jump to your homeworld. I need to escort you to a secure area. Vexel turned, the bioluminescent patches on his thorax pulsing with a pattern Chen's translator identified as gratitude. Commander, my people have never understood species like yours. We evolved on a world without predators, without natural disasters. Peace is our natural state. Violence is incomprehensible to us. And yet here we are, Chen replied softly. Perhaps the universe needs both our kinds. The Council fears you, Vexel said. They fear what humans might become with access to advanced technology. They fear your adaptability, your persistence, your willingness to fight. Chen smiled slightly. They should. Those traits kept us alive on Earth. But they should also understand that the same drive that makes us dangerous also compels us to protect. Humans don't like bullies, Ambassador. And from what I can see, the swarm is the biggest bully in the galaxy. As they walked through the corridors of the Thermopylae, Zeraxian and human, the ship's intercom crackled to life. All hands, secure for jump. Combat deployment in T-5 minutes. In the darkness of space, 17 human warships aligned their positions, preparing to leap across the stars to face an enemy that outnumbered them more than 10 to 1. Not for conquest, not for resources, but because someone had asked for help, and humans had never learned to ignore a cry for aid. The ships disappeared in flashes of brilliance, hurtling through hyperspace toward a battle that would change the galaxy's perception of the Deathworlders forever. Deathworlders unleashed. The TDF fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Ziraxian system, immediately activating stealth protocols. Admiral Zhang studied the tactical display, his expression grim. The swarm had already established itself on the system's outer planets, their organic hybrid ships swarming like insects around the fourth planet. Status report, Zhang ordered. Swarm fleet consists of approximately 230 vessels. Admiral, the tactical officer responded. They've deployed harvester units to the mining colonies on the outer moons. Life signs on those installations are minimal. Commander Chen turned to Ambassador Vexel, who trembled visibly at the news. Ambassador, we need to know if there are any civilians left on those moons. Automated distress beacons are still active from 3 research stations, Vexel replied, his voice unsteady. Perhaps 1,000 of my people. Zhang and Chen exchanged glances. Standard protocol would be to secure the primary objective, Zirax Prime, and consider the outer colonies lost. But that wasn't the human way. Lieutenant Richards, prepare 3 Marine dropships with rescue teams, Chen ordered. Commander Jackson, take the Agamemnon and Bellerophon to provide cover for the extraction. The rest of the fleet will proceed toward Zirax Prime. The swarm will detect us the moment we break formation, Zhang cautioned. Chen nodded. Then we give them something to focus on. The Thermopylae will lead a direct assault on their center mass. Make it loud. Make it messy. While they're focused on us, Jackson's team extracts the survivors. As orders flowed through the fleet, the human ships broke their stealth posture and accelerated into the system. The reaction from the swarm was immediate. Dozens of their biomechanical ships peeled away from the harvest operations, orienting toward the incoming threat. The bridge of the Thermopylae hummed with tense energy as tactical officers called out positions and weapon stations reported ready status. Unlike the ships of other council races, which relied heavily on automation and AI, human vessels maintained skilled crew members at critical positions, an artifact of their distrust in fully automated warfare after their own troubled history with AI. All weapons hot, the tactical officer announced. Kinetic barriers at maximum. Admiral Zhang stood at the center of the bridge, calm amid the controlled chaos. Target their lead vessels. Standard attack pattern Zeta. Let's give Commander Jackson the distraction he needs. The human dreadnoughts opened fire first, their mass accelerator cannons launching hypervelocity rounds that tore through the first wave of swarm ships. Unlike energy weapons, which could be diffused or reflected, the kinetic projectiles delivered devastating physical force that shattered the organic hybrid hulls. The swarm responded with overwhelming numbers, swarming around the human ships like angry insects, firing energy lances that splashed against their kinetic barriers. Barrier strength at 82% and holding, reported the defense officer. Chen watched the tactical display as Jackson's team slipped toward the outer moons, largely unnoticed in the chaos of the main battle. Status of the rescue operation. First dropship has landed on Research Station Alpha. Encountering heavy resistance, swarm ground forces have infested the station. Marine Captain Dia Patel led her squad through the twisted corridors of the Ziraxian Research Station. The interior was barely recognizable, coated with the chidness growth characteristic of swarm infestation. Her helmet filters worked overtime to screen out the spores floating in the air, toxic to most species, though merely irritating to humans with their robust immune systems. Life signs ahead, Captain, her sergeant reported, checking the scanner. 20 Ziraxians, barricaded in the central laboratory, and multiple swarm signatures converging on their position. Patel signaled her squad to advance. Unlike the powered armor of other council species, human combat suits were lighter, emphasizing mobility over protection, another evolutionary adaptation from their homeworld, where speed and adaptability often trumped raw strength. The squad encountered the first swarm drones at the junction leading to the laboratory, insectoid creatures the size of large dogs, with razor-sharp mandibles and chitinous armor. In the confined space of the corridor, the creatures should have had the advantage. But humans had evolved as pursuit predators, with an uncanny ability to adapt tactics on the fly. Patel's squad shifted formation seamlessly, creating overlapping fields of fire that cut down the first wave of drones. "Switch to incendiaries," Patel ordered as more drones poured from ventilation shafts. "These things hate fire." The squad's weapons cycled to incendiary rounds, igniting the creature's organic armor. The swarm, facing an enemy that didn't retreat or break formation under their onslaught, began to show something rarely seen in their behavior: hesitation. Patel's team reached the laboratory doors, which were barricaded from within. "Zeraxian survivors, this is Captain Patel of the Terran Defense Force. We're here to extract you. Please open the door." The barricade moved slightly, and a single Zeraxian peered through. "The swarm, they're everywhere. How did you get through?" "We'll explain later," Patel replied. "Right now, we need to move. Our extraction window is closing." As the survivors emerged, Patel was struck by their injuries, not just physical wounds, but a deep terror etched into their very posture. These were beings from a world without predators, suddenly confronted with the universe's most efficient killers. "Stay behind us. Move when we move. Stop when we stop," she instructed them. "We're getting you out of here." Aboard the Thermopylae, the battle had intensified. 3 human destroyers had suffered critical damage, though their crews had managed to evacuate. The swarm, despite losing dozens of ships to the humans' tactics, still outnumbered them significantly. "Admiral, the rescue teams have extracted approximately 800 survivors from the research stations," the communications officer reported. "Commander Jackson is requesting permission to rejoin the main fleet." Zhang nodded. "Granted." "And the status of Zerax Prime?" "Swarm advance forces have begun atmospheric entry on the southern continent," Chen replied, studying the tactical display. "Their main harvester ships are still about 6 hours from optimal position." The Admiral's expression darkened. "We can't hold them off indefinitely with our current numbers." "Commander Chen, it's time for Phase 2. Chen nodded and opened a secure channel to Captain Patel, now safely back aboard the Bellerophon with the rescued Zeraxians. "Captain, begin deployment of the GAIA packages." GAIA, Ground Adaptive Interference Arrays, represented a technology unique to humans. Born from their experience with guerrilla warfare and asymmetric conflicts on Earth, the devices were designed to turn an environment against an invading force. "Ambassador Vexel." Chen turned to the Zeraxian, who had insisted on remaining on the bridge. "I need your authorization to deploy these devices on your world. They will temporarily alter your planet's environmental systems." Vexel hesitated only briefly. "Do what you must, Commander. Save my people." As the human fleet regrouped and pushed toward Zerax Prime, dropships detached from their ventral bays, streaking toward the planet's surface. Each carried teams of human engineers and dozens of GAIA packages. On the surface, Zeraxian civilians watched in awe as human dropships landed in their cities, disgorging soldiers who moved with a predatory grace utterly alien to them. The humans established defensive perimeters and began installing devices at key environmental nodes: weather control stations, tectonic monitoring facilities, and atmospheric processors. The swarm ground forces, already beginning their harvest operations on the southern continent, suddenly found themselves facing an environment turned hostile. Localized storm systems materialized over their concentration points. Seismic vibrations at frequencies that disrupted their hive mind communications rippled through the ground. Atmospheric composition shifted in ways that fouled their biological sensors. In space, the human fleet executed maneuvers no council tactician would have considered, deliberately placing their ships in harm's way to draw swarm vessels into carefully planned kill zones. Human captains made split-second decisions without consulting Central Command, adapting to the swarm's patterns faster than the hive mind could compensate. "They're retreating from the southern landmass," reported the tactical officer, surprise evident in his voice. "The GAIA network is working." Ambassador Vexel watched in astonishment as the tactical display showed the swarm forces falling into disarray. "How? The swarm has never retreated." "Predator response," Chen explained. "The swarm evolved as an apex consumer. Nothing ever challenged them effectively. But Earth evolved countless predator-prey relationships. We understand at a genetic level how to make something decide we're not worth the energy to consume." On the main view screen, the battle had transformed. The swarm vessels, no longer coordinating effectively with their ground forces, began to break formation. The human fleet, despite their reduced numbers, pressed the advantage with a ferocity that bordered on recklessness to other council species, but which humans recognized as calculated aggression. Their command ship, Zhang pointed to a massive organic structure at the rear of the swarm formation. "If we can destroy it, the entire hive network will collapse temporarily." "Sir, we'd need to get past their entire defensive line," the tactical officer protested. Zhang's weathered face broke into a smile. "Or under it." He turned to Chen. "Commander, ready the Mjolnir protocol." Chen nodded grimly and entered authorization codes into her console. Deep within the Thermopyla's hull, a special weapon system activated, a technology humans had refrained from sharing with the Council. The dreadnought suddenly accelerated toward the swarm line, its kinetic barriers flaring as enemy fire intensified. Just before impact with the swarm vessels, the Thermopyla executed a maneuver that defied conventional physics, a controlled micro-jump through hyperspace, covering mere kilometers, but bypassing the swarm's defensive line entirely. The human ship rematerialized directly alongside the swarm command vessel. Before the organic hybrid could react, the Thermopyla launched a barrage of specialized warheads that attached to the command ship's hull. Not explosives, but terraforming charges, devices designed to rapidly alter the biological composition of an environment. The effect was immediate and devastating. The command ship, being partly organic, began to dissolve as the terraforming charges rewrote its very cellular structure. The psychic scream of the hive mind reverberated through space, felt even by the less sensitive humans. Throughout the system, swarm vessels suddenly lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic. On Xerax Prime, the ground forces began to turn on each other. The hive mind's control shattered. "All ships, press the advantage," Zhang ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The remaining human vessels surged forward, targeting the disorganized swarm ships with precision. What had been a desperate holding action transformed into a rout. 3 days later, when the Council's response fleet finally arrived, they found the Xeraxian system secured. The swarm had been driven back with catastrophic losses, their hive mind so thoroughly disrupted that intelligence suggested they would avoid the sector for generations. The cost had been high. 5 human ships lost, hundreds of crew members killed or wounded. But Xerax Prime and its population of billions had been saved, along with the majority of the research station personnel. In the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Vexel stood before the assembled representatives, his exoskeleton now glowing with the vibrant azure of health and the gold of formal ceremony. "Let the record show," he began, his translator conveying the emotion in his natural voice, that when the Xeraxian people faced extinction, it was the humans, the Deathworlders of Earth, who answered our call. They did not debate. They did not hesitate. They came, they fought, and they prevailed against an enemy the Council had deemed undefeatable. High Counselor Meritax shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Vexel continued. "The Xeraxian Confederation hereby proposes that the Terran Alliance be granted full voting rights within the Council, with immediate elevation to senior member status." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Such an elevation would typically take centuries of probationary membership. Commander Chen, seated beside Admiral Zhang in the human section, leaned toward her superior. "That wasn't part of the plan," she whispered. Zhang's expression remained neutral, but a slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. No, it wasn't. But it seems our new friends have learned something from us about changing the rules when they don't make sense. As the council debated the unprecedented proposal, Chen gazed around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of peaceful species. They had built a remarkable civilization, spanning thousands of worlds, creating art and science of incredible beauty. But they had forgotten something humans had learned through bitter experience on their harsh homeworld. Sometimes, peace must be defended with force. Perhaps that was humanity's role in the greater galactic community. Not conquerors, not saviors, but guardians. The Deathworlders who answered when called, who fought so others wouldn't have to, who carried the burden of violence so peaceful species could remain peaceful. It wasn't a glorious destiny, but as Chen watched the Ziraxian ambassador stand proudly before the council, she thought it might be one worth embracing.